Yes, once again, I welcome you all to our training, this very important training on climate change and conflict, strategies for mitigation and adaptation. This is the day 2 of the training on climate change and conflict. We had actually started this training yesterday, where we expatiated on the various terminologies and concepts of climate change and conflict. We looked at the nexus, the link between climate change and conflict, and how it actually impacts and drives conflict all over the world. Today, we will look at the concluding part of the training. Like I said yesterday, the training itself contains 9 modules. We were able to treat 5 modules as of yesterday. We will be treating the concluding part of the training, today. For the benefit of those of us who are just joining us today, who could not join us as of yesterday when we started the training, I will just spare the first 10 minutes to give a recap of what we did yesterday, and that will also make it easier for for others who have just joined us to at least to be on the same page with us all. Like I said, module 1 yesterday, we started by looking at an introduction to climate change and conflict, where we discussed extensively an understanding of what climate change is all about. We talked about the fact that climate change is a long-term variation, a long-term shift in in the temperature of the earth. We looked at it that climate change is different from weather events, because weather events are usually short-term in nature, and just the way you have dry season and you have rainy season, those are weather events. But climate change is long-term in nature. It is actually a shift in precipitation patterns, a shift in temperature, and even other atmospheric conditions over a long term. And of course, these changes, like we said, are primarily driven by human activities. When humans burn fossil fuels and do some kind of deforestation and industrial processes, all these are the major causes of climate change. And we looked at some key concepts of climate change, where we discussed the greenhouse effect. And we said the greenhouse effect is actually the process by which greenhouse gases trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, leading to a warming effect. We discussed that. We talked about carbon footprint, another concept and another terminology that is usually something. Of course, it involves the total amount of greenhouse gases emitted directly or indirectly by human activities. Don't forget, we said yesterday that 80% of gas emissions that causes climate change is driven by human activities. It's primarily caused by human activities. Only 10 or 20% are natural causes of climate change. 80% is primarily caused by human activities. We looked at global warming. We tried to understand what we mean by global warming yesterday. We said, of course, global warming is an increase in average global temperature over time, and it is caused due to human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. We treated that in detail yesterday. We looked at it, and of course, we also said that there's another terminology called climate variability, which has to do with those natural fluctuations in climate patterns over time, including seasonal changes and long-term trends. We also, under Module 1, talked about the causes and consequences of climate change. where we know that climate change has far-reaching consequences on ecosystems, economies, and even human societies. And we looked at some of the primary causes and consequences of climate change to include, rising sea levels. We discussed that. We talked about extreme weather events as some of the causes of climate change. We looked at ecological disruption, which, of course, is one of the consequences of climate change, and also resource scarcity. We went further to talk about the link between climate change and conflict, where we said that the relationship between climate change and conflict is actually complex and multi-faceted, because we said that the environmental stressors and even resource scarcity that results from climate change can increase existing social and economic and even political tensions, which can lead to conflict. We discussed all of that in detail. We also looked at food insecurity, displacement, and even forced migration. These are some of the consequences of climate change. We looked at that aspect in detail. We discussed it. We also went to look at some case studies where we said that the Darfur conflict, which is a conflict that is completely not in our region, because it has to do with environmental degradation and resource scarcity, because it was caused by tensions between farmers and herders in Sudan, which leading to violent conflict over land and water resources. We also talked about our own Nigeria, that the Lake Chad Basin crisis, that is the drying up of the water in the Lake Chad, is what is responsible for the farmer herder crisis we are having in Nigeria. And it is largely driven by climate change. We talked about the Syria conflict, civil war also, and that was where we concluded Module 1. We went as far as looking at Module 2. Under Module 2, we looked at climate change mitigation strategies. Yes, Module 2 tries to talk about the fact that, yes, even though we know that we are faced with climate change consequences, then we should be looking at ways of mitigating the consequences of climate change. And what are the strategies for mitigating climate change? That was what Module 2 was actually talking about. And we talked about the first mitigation strategy was to reduce greenhouse gas emission, reducing greenhouse gas emission. And we said one of the ways of reducing greenhouse gas emission is to transit to renewable energy, using renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, and even hydroelectric and geothermal power. These are all essential for reducing reliance on fossil fuels and even lowering greenhouse gas emissions. We discussed that very well. We also looked at another strategy involving energy efficiency and conservation. Yes, we talked about, which involves improving energy efficiency in buildings, transportation, industry, and agriculture. These are another critical strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We also talked about another strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and climate change mitigation is the use of government policy and policy and governance, knowing fully well that effective climate change mitigation actually requires robust policy frameworks and governance structures, both at the international, the national, and even local levels. Governments and even policymakers and stakeholders play a crucial role, in developing frameworks, in developing and implementing policies and regulations to address climate change. We gave an example of the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement, we said, is an international cooperation and collaboration framework that is essential for addressing global challenges such as climate change. We also looked at national and local policies, where countries begin to integrate climate change strategies into their national and local development plans, because both national and local governments play key roles in implementing climate change. We discussed that also in detail, and we also went as far as looking at Module 3. In Module 3, we looked at climate change adaptation strategies. In order to, after mitigating the consequences of climate change, we should also develop adaptation strategies. Those strategies that will help us to build resilience, so that whatever significant risk and challenges that vulnerable societies face, it will, the impact will be a little bit less impactful. Yes, adaptation in vulnerable communities. We know that people who live in vulnerable communities, especially those in low-lying coastal areas, those in arid regions, and even small island states, we know that these communities often lack the resources and infrastructure, needed to cope with the impacts of climate change. So we are looking at adaptation. How do they adapt? One of the adaptation strategies we talked about yesterday was building resilience in at-risk populations. Adaptation efforts should actually prioritize building resilience in vulnerable communities, by enhancing their capacity. We talked about how to enhance the capacity of vulnerable communities to withstand and even recover from climate-related hazards. We looked at another adaptation strategy involving what we call climate smart agriculture. Yes, there were various contributions from wonderful contributions from our participants yesterday, looking at how the climate smart agriculture can also be integrated into Nigeria, because we know that the agriculture is particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. And this actually leads to shift in precipitation patterns. Rising temperatures, they also affect agricultural products. And of course, it will go a long way to give us some kind of food insecurity. That is how climate change impacts what we are doing. We discussed all of that. We also looked at even infrastructure and the technology, infrastructure and technology, where we said that people should build disaster resilient infrastructure, designing and constructing some kind of infrastructure that can withstand climate related hazards such as floods and even storms and sea level rise is very essential, because we know that you cannot have any form of adaptation if you do not know how to build structures and construct and design infrastructure that can withstand climate-related hazards. We discussed this very well yesterday. We looked at the technological innovations. We discussed how advancement in technology can offer opportunities for developing innovative solutions to climate change adaptation challenges. We said technologies like remote sensing, geographic information systems, and even predictive modeling can help to identify climate risk and even monitor changes in environmental conditions. So what we are saying here is people can actually use even technology, even AI, artificial intelligence can be integrated in climate change adaptation, in as much as it can also be integrated in climate risk, climate conflict risk identification and monitoring and even reporting. So we proceeded to Module 4, where we looked at conflict prevention and early warning systems. As conflict and peace professionals, we have always advocated for the need to identify conflicts and actually prevent conflict, because it is far more cheaper to prevent conflict than to resolve. When you talk about post-conflict reconciliation and stability. So the same thing, conflict prevention and early warning systems can be applied to climate change. So in Module 4 yesterday, we expatiated on identifying climate-related conflict risk. Because we know that climate change can exacerbate existing social, economic, and political tensions. We said that climate change, it is the leading threat to global peace and stability worldwide. It is the biggest threat to peace and stability, peace and security worldwide, climate change. And as such, we have to be very careful. And at the same time, we talked about the fact that climate change is a threat multiplier. So there's need to identify climate-related conflict risk. And the only way to identify climate conflict-related risk is to do what we call risk assessment and analysis. Risk assessment and analysis is a conflict prevention and early warning framework. Yes, it can be used to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment. When you do risk assessment, the end point is to do what? Is to identify potential sources of conflict related to climate change. You know, some of those conflicts that are related to climate change include, water scarcity, food insecurity, displacement and forced migration, and even competition for resources. We analyzed the root causes. We looked at the dynamics and drivers of these conflicts yesterday. And of course, we looked at early warning indicators. You know, when you do risk assessment and analysis, you will definitely identify early warning indicators. And that will involve monitoring systems to detect signs of escalating tension or even emerging conflicts that are related to climate change. These indicators may include changes in resource availability, even social unrest, you know, is also one of them. Then, of course, the most important thing to do is to ensure that, intergroup tensions, when they are identified, it can signal the need for timely intervention and response. Then we talked about early warning systems too, and we looked at developing and implementing early warning systems. That was in Module 4. So we ended the training yesterday with a thorough analysis of Module 5. And Module 5, we looked at mediation and negotiation in climate-related conflict. Yes, because we know that there is environmental conflict. Environmental conflict can occur as a result of climate change-related conflict. So, of course, if that happens, mediation is also a very important conflict resolution tool that can be used in resolving such environmental conflict that are arising from climate change impacts. We said that mediators can facilitate dialogue, they can foster collaboration, and even help parties find mutually acceptable solution, you know, to complex environmental disputes. We looked at facilitating dialogue and consensus building. We also looked at the role of third-party mediators. You know that there's negotiation and there's mediation. We struck a difference between mediation and negotiation yesterday, where we said that the only difference between mediation and negotiation is the presence of a third party in a mediation activity. When there is no third party, it becomes negotiation. But the moment there is a third party, then that is mediation. Like we've always said, that mediation is an assisted negotiation activity. Yes, mediation is like negotiation, but it is just that mediation is assisted negotiation because of the availability or the presence of a third party. And these are two very viable conflict resolution techniques that can be used in climate-related conflicts to resolve environmental disputes. We discussed that in detail in Module 5 yesterday. Today, we will continue with Module 6, 7, 8, and 9, meaning that we have 4 modules to cover today to finish this particular training. You can see how important this training is, climate change and conflict, mitigation, strategies for mitigation and adaptation, because we know very important that this particular slide I'm using, like I've said before, will be shared. Even the course material will be shared. Yes, alongside those who, alongside the certificate for those who are going to need it. The certificate and the course material is optional, and it is 10,000 naira only. We are not just, it's a giveaway. The training itself is free, but if you feel you want to, have the course material and also the training certificate, then you just pay a token of just 10,000 naira, and you have all of them. So today we will very quickly look at module 6. We should all know that we are all partners in the collaborative efforts for climate mitigation. As a peace practitioner, you should know the role you're supposed to play in conflict, climate change mitigation and also adaptation. If you cannot do it for yourself, you can also, it is possible to advise those who can, even help out with those who would need the information. Now, as we progress for today's training, looking at module 6. In module 6, we will be looking at the role of international organizations and NGOs in climate change and conflict. You know, we know that climate change is a critical aspect that requires the collaboration of international organizations and even local NGOs. International organizations play a significant role in addressing the intersection of climate change and conflict by promoting cooperation. Yeah, that is what international organizations do. They promote cooperation, provide expertise, and even facilitate dialogue among nations and stakeholders. Yes, because if you would try to understand the functions and contributions of international organizations, it's essential for effective climate change mitigation and conflict resolution efforts. So international organizations contribute towards effective climate change mitigation and also conflict resolution efforts, because conflict will definitely arise. You know, environmental conflict will arise from climate-related conflict, climate-related risk. So there will be need for conflict resolution efforts to be done, to be handled by international organizations. One of these international organizations is that of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. That is CCC, UNFCCC. You know, that is called United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. You know, these organizations actually, the main initiative, what they do is related to climate change mitigation, you know, and adaptation and even financing. You know, that is what the UNFCCC, you know, as an international organization on climate change and conflict, that is what they do. They also help to facilitate international climate negotiations. They implement agreements such as the Paris Agreement and even support countries in their climate action efforts. Yes, that is the role of UNFCCC as an international organization in climate change and conflict. What about another one called Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change? We call it IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Of course, that is another international organization, another international NGO that is doing a lot in terms of assessing climate change impacts, you know, assessing climate change vulnerabilities and even mitigation options. And they also come up with reports and assessment on climate-related risk, which includes and their relevance for policy makers and practitioners. Then what about NGOs? We have talked about international organizations. Then let us look at NGOs, because NGOs actually play a crucial role in climate change and conflict resolution, because what they do is to advocate for environmental justice. They advocate and they even promote community resilience and even implement sustainable development projects at the grassroots level. You know, very, very important. And that is the role of climate, NGOs, you know. And of course, we know that without the contributions of NGOs, which is very essential for leveraging, you know, expertise and resources in addressing climate-related challenges, the international organizations and even governments of various countries cannot handle it alone. So NGOs actually have a big role, a very big role to play when it comes to, climate change and conflict. Then, of course, we know that the NGOs are mainly seen in the area of advocacy and capacity building, because I don't know, in Nigeria, as sad as it may be, we do not have many NGOs that are specifically working directly only in the area of climate change. We have NGOs who are working in various aspects, in various fields, but of course, we still have, and some of them may even delve into climate change on a very small scale. But when we talk about having NGOs who are actually fully, completely and committed to climate change advocacy and capacity building, we are still lacking. There's still a serious gap that need to be filled. And of course, when we look at, there are some programs that NGOs can even conduct to empower communities and even local organizations and vulnerable groups to adapt to climate change and even mitigate its adverse effects. Yesterday, Professor Chukwudi told us, or actually gave some very powerful contribution in respect of how we can all jointly come together, form a united front, and contribute our quota in climate change mitigation and also conflict resolution. Or resolution of conflict that are, driven by climate change. So that will be all for Module 6, talking about the role of international organizations and NGOs. We will actually be going to Module 7, where we will look at legal and ethical considerations. There are some international laws that provide a framework for addressing climate change and its associated conflicts. So we will actually look at that very quickly as we progress. International environmental laws, that is Module 7, that's where we are. We will be looking at legal and ethical consideration. We said that these international laws are, these international laws actually provide a framework that can be used to address climate change and associated conflicts by establishing norms. We establish norms, establish principles, and even mechanisms for cooperation among nations. So when you understand the legal dimensions of climate change, the legal dimensions of climate change governance, which is essential for developing effective strategies to mitigate environmental risk and resolve disputes. Now, because within the international community, we have key treaties and conventions, agreements that has to be adhered to, that has to be followed, that has to be, that has to be followed, So let us look at some treaties, some key treaties and conventions within the international legal environment that we need to, be adhering to. Like we talked about the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement, of course, it's a major international treaty, that is related to climate change. It is also related to biodiversity conservation and even environmental protection. So of course, the UN, the United Nations, the UNFCCC is there. Then we will also look at some other obligations and mechanisms for addressing climate-related challenges, including emissions reduction targets, adaptation commitments, and even financial assistance for developing countries. The next thing we need to find out is now this international environmental laws. What are the enforcement mechanisms in place? So to ensure that countries who are subscribers to these treaties, fully adhere or even go ahead to adhere and abide by the terms and conditions of the treaties that they sign. In as much as we have talked about some of these treaties, now what are the enforcement mechanisms? That is the aspect, because if you have treaties, you have conventions, you have, so for countries to, to pay attention to them and even take them seriously, there must be some form of enforcement and compliance mechanisms under international environmental law. There are some dispute resolution mechanisms and even compliance committees and even reporting mechanisms, that have to be put in place in order to ensure compliance, with treaty, with compliance with treaty obligations and even promoting accountability among states. There are some ethical issues too that we quickly need to look into. Ethical issues, because we know that climate change actually raises complex ethical questions that is related to justice. Ethical questions related to equity, related to justice, and even responsibility. As vulnerable communities, vulnerable communities are affected disproportionately. Yes. So, we because these vulnerable communities actually bear the brunt of environmental impact. So what we are going to also look at is exploring ethical dimensions of climate change governance, because it is crucial for promoting fairness, it is crucial for promoting solidarity and even sustainability in mitigation and adaptation efforts. There's another aspect we quickly need to look at, is the aspect of climate justice. We try to find out what do we mean by climate justice, because climate justice, has to do with the idea of ensuring that those who are disproportionately affected by climate-related risk are actually fairly treated and attended to. Because when we talk about intergenerational equity, environmental justice, and distributive justice, these are aspects that are related to climate justice. So we'll look at that very quickly. And finally, we will look at, we'll go to module 8. Module 8 itself will be talking about developing climate conflict resilience plans. Climate conflict resilience plans. Yes. Apart from mitigation, then adaptation strategies, of course. Resilience plans must be put in place, because there's what we call community-based resilience planning. Community-based resilience planning actually involves engaging local stakeholders in assessing community risk, identifying vulnerabilities, and even developing adaptive strategies. These are some of the things we need to look into as we are, moving ahead. So just a minute here. I will just, please, for those of us who are still listening, you will just permit me with 1 minute. Let me quickly attend to something, on the office here before we continue. Just a minute, I'll be right. Yes, thank you very much for staying by. Let us continue, please. That was a slight distraction. I needed to attend to something in the office here. So we are in module 8 of this training, where we are talking about developing climate conflict resilience plans. You know, we discussed community-based resilience planning, and we said, you know, community-based resilience planning in itself it actually involves engaging local stakeholders in assessing climate risk, identifying vulnerabilities, and even developing adaptive strategies that will enhance resilience to climate-related conflicts. So here in this module, we are just going to explore some participatory approaches to resilience planning, highlighting success stories and even lessons learned from grassroots initiatives, you know, around the world. Now, of course, what we must even know that we should take out of this particular module 8 that involves developing climate conflict resilience plans is that it is, community-based resilience actually involves participatory approaches. Take note of that. Yes, because participatory approaches have to involve engaging communities in resilience planning, including stakeholders mapping, vulnerability assessment, and even scenario planning. Yes, what we should know is that we have a very poor knowledge of climate change and conflict in Nigeria. You know, communities and vulnerable communities are not usually carried along. Whatever, the kind of climate change we are doing in Nigeria is on the low end. Advocacy is very poor, awareness is very poor, and to a very large extent, inclusiveness is also very, very poor. It is rather unfortunate. We are going to discuss that and share ideas on how we can all be of assistance in this situation, because community resilience, community-led resilience projects are essential, because it can help in creating innovative approaches that can be used to build adaptive capacity and even foster social cohesion in the face of climate change impacts. You know, there are so many success stories in various African countries, but we cannot say that of Nigeria. Now let's look at what we call national and regional resilience plans. What we are trying to say is that every nation of the world are beginning to integrate climate change mitigation strategies, climate change adaptation strategies, and even climate resilience resilience strategies into their national, regional, and even local government development plans. You cannot be developing plans on how to move your country forward, on how to have some kind of stability and development without integrating climate change mitigation strategies into your national development goals and your national development plans. You know, it's unfortunate that we are not doing that in Nigeria, but of course we will still talk about that. So what we are trying to say is that national and regional resilience plans play a crucial role, you know, when coordinating climate adaptation efforts, because it helps to align policy priorities and even mobilize resources to address systemic climate-related risk. So these are some of the things we need to take into consideration. It is also something that involves an integrated approach, because most countries are even developing what we call national adaptation plans. We call it NAPs, NAPs. You know, we should be having regional climate action strategies and even multi-sectoral coordination mechanisms. These are ethical, workability, projects that needs to be put in motion or set in motion. You know, in fact, if we also look at issues involving mainstreaming climate considerations into development policies, just like I've just said, promoting ecosystem that is based on adaptation, and even fostering partnerships for resilience building. What is Africa doing as far as integrating national adaptation plans into our into our development plans as a country or as a region. Very, very important. Now, there are some policy recommendations we need to put into consideration here, because we should know that development of policy recommendations for enhancing climate conflict resilience at the national and regional level should be based on best practices and, of course, lessons learned, and even there should be stakeholder consultations. These are some of the things we need to put into consideration, and we must consider cross-sectoral priorities, such as water management, land use planning, disaster risk reduction, and social protection in resilience planning processes. So that talks about Module 8 in details. We will actually move to the final module. The final module for this training is going to be Module 9. Module 9 is looking at monitoring and evaluating climate interventions. Monitoring and evaluating climate interventions. We know very well that, of course, whatever form of interventions that is put in place, whether it is meant to mitigate climate change or not, it has to be monitored. Any form of peace-building intervention, any form of a climate change mitigation strategy or project, it must be monitored and evaluated. And why do we monitor and evaluate any project? Is to ensure that actions are going according to plan. And also, it is to make sure that we are able to learn from the process, so that whatever mistake that is made during the implementation stage can be avoided in a future intervention strategies, or in a future intervention plans. Now, monitoring climate conflict intervention is essential, because we can use it to assess the effectiveness, and we can even use it to even track progress towards resilience goals and even identify areas for improvement. That is why we do monitoring and evaluation of climate conflict interventions. So here we'll just, this module 9 will just look at how to, monitoring tools and techniques that can be used to measure the impacts and outcomes of climate adaptation and conflict prevention initiatives. Now, what are the indicators of success? That if you are monitoring or trying to evaluate the effectiveness or the progress of any effort, you must have a benchmark, because progress can actually be measured against standard. Progress can be measured against the benchmark. So what are the indicators of success? What are the key performance indicators? What are the KPIs? So KPIs, key performance indicators, must be identified for monitoring climate conflict interventions. KPIs such as if there's any changes in vulnerability, if there's changes in resilience, if there's any changes in adaptive capacity of any community, and even if there's changes in social cohesion. Those are the indicators of success when monitoring and evaluating climate conflict interventions. And of course, in the selection of appropriate indicators, it must be based on project objectives. That is, it must be based on the goal of that project, the objectives of that project. What are the targets? The target outcomes, and even data availability. So, and of course, it must also consider both quantitative and qualitative outcomes. In monitoring also and evaluating climate conflict interventions, we have data collection methods. The data collection methods we are talking about, you must be, of course, we all know that methods of monitoring climate conflict interventions must include surveys. Apart from surveys, it must include interviews, it must include focus group discussions, it must include participatory mapping, remote sensing, and even geospatial analysis. So, of course, these are the methods of data collection that must be put into consideration when monitoring and evaluating climate conflict interventions. Of course, there's need for privacy protection also, even data reliability and validity, and even informed consent when collecting data in the process of monitoring and evaluating climate change interventions. Now, let us look at evaluation frameworks. What are the frameworks that we can use to provide a systematic approach to assessing the effectiveness or assessing the efficiency, relevance, and even sustainability of climate conflict intervention? You must have specific frameworks that can be used to identify, or to assess the effectiveness and efficiency of climate conflict interventions. Yes, because these different evaluation methods and frameworks, must actually be conducted for impact assessment and even performance evaluation of adaptation and peacebuilding initiatives. These are things we must put into consideration. Remember, this is Module 9. We are looking at monitoring and evaluating climate conflict interventions. We have discussed the monitoring tools and techniques. We have looked at indicators of success, which involve the KPIs. That involves whether there's a change in vulnerability, or whether there's a change in resilience, or if there's a change in adaptive capacity of any community, and even social cohesion. We have looked at the data collection methods. We have talked about evaluation frameworks. Now, the next aspect, which is like almost towards the end of this, we are talking about impact assessment. Impact assessment, because there must be methods, in as much as you have methods for assessing the effectiveness and efficiency. You should also have methods to assess methodologies, methods that you must use, like logic models, theory of change, and even outcome mapping, that can be used to evaluate the causal links between intervention and desired outcome. These are aspects of impact assessment, that has to be put into consideration. And finally, we will look at continuous improvement. Every intervention, every monitoring and evaluation, every monitoring and evaluation of climate conflict intervention must also emphasize on continuous learning and adaptive management approaches, in the whole evaluation process, because you must encourage stakeholders to reflect on lessons that is being learned. And of course, we must integrate, evaluation of findings. We must integrate evaluation of findings into decision-making processes that will ensure recommendations are actionable, contextually relevant, and even contribute to ongoing program improvement and innovation. That is very important. Every monitoring and intervention, not just that of climate-related conflict, in any form of monitoring and evaluation, you must emphasize on continuous learning and adaptive approaches that will encourage people and stakeholders to reflect on the lessons learned, so that improvement can be made in future intervention strategies. That is the entire aspect of Module 9. And of course, that will lead us, or that has led us to the end of this particular training. Remember, it was said it was 9 complete modules. We did like 60% of the modules yesterday, which was 5 modules. And today, we have actually taken our time to expatiate on the remaining 4 modules. At the same time, we know that we have actually been learning through our interactive sessions here. At least, if not for the interactive sessions yesterday, we wouldn't have known that there was a professor in our midst who actually gave some very useful contributions yesterday, in addition to other contributors too that spoke extensively. So we are going to have the floor open now for the next 30 minutes while we bring in our contributions, talk about recommendations, and even successful climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies within your community, or within or in communities where you have lived, and possible recommendations for us also. So normally, you know how we do it. We start by you raising your hand, and I will appoint you before you speak, so that everything can be orderly. So starting with Mr. Mbode Muta, please, you try to make it quick, and you have the floor now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I don't know if I'm audible enough.
Yes, you are audible. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Just a question. While talking about negotiation and mediation and negotiation, now in the case of mediation, the one you say with the third party, now during a situation of mitigation of climate-related conflict, now if you discover that a third party is taking side, what are you supposed to do when a third party takes side during mediation?
Well, it is not allowed because mediation has codes of conduct and ethics. A mediator is bound by a code of practice to be non-partisan, to be non-judgmental, to be unbiased. You know, a mediator is not expected to take sides. In fact, that is one of the major reasons why mediator is one of the most widely used alternative dispute resolution activity because of its ability. I mean, to even, in fact, mediation actually puts the decision making in the hands of the disputants or in the hands of the conflicting parties, because the mediator cannot take a decision. The mediator cannot even decide on behalf of the conflicting parties. So he is not even allowed to decide, to even judge or even moralize. So every professional mediator knows these basic principles and ethics and codes of conduct. So of course, it is not allowed to do so. And if it's maybe one mediator actually goes the boundary or goes beyond that by taking sides, then one party can decide to walk out of the mediation process. That's why mediation is a voluntary process. It is not coerced. It is not so. And every party to a mediation arrangement can walk away, can leave the process, can quit the process at any point in time during the mediation process. Thank you very much. Now, the next person that I think we should speak is Mr. Said Adedoyin. Are you there? You have the floor. Mr. Said Adedoyin.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. And
Yes.
thank you for nourishing our minds since yesterday about the impact and some solutions that could be deployed against the effects of climate change. Yeah, please, I have not heard you speak about the role of indigenous knowledge in enhancing the sustainability of climate change roles to combat the effect of climate change. So what is your take about the role of indigenous knowledge? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Said. Were you with us yesterday?
Yes, I was, not for too long.
Okay, because if you were with us fully, completely yesterday, you would have, I think there would have been no need for you to ask this question. It was discussed yesterday. I think Professor Chukudi, highlighted and expanded our views in respect of the role of indigenous knowledge in climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, and even resilience. Of course, it is an aspect that has to be integrated if we want to have a holistic process. So, in fact, it was well treated yesterday, and the reason why I didn't even talk about that area was because we have actually trashed it yesterday. But of course, without taking much of our time, it is an integral part of an integral part that must not be sidestepped or overlooked when we are going up. When we are handling climate change mitigation, adaptation, and even resilience. Practices. I still see Mr. Iberedem. Mr. Iberedem Uko, your hand has been up, so I think you have the floor now. You said you have been having some issues with your, but I believe.
Yeah, having issues with my connector. Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. I'll be very quick because of my network over here. Yeah, on Model 7, it talks about the legal and ethical considerations. And my particular interest is on the ethical perspective because it plays a very key role in addressing climate change issues, even in our locality. You made mention of consideration like stewardship, I pen down stewardship, ownership, equity, and climate justice. And of course, for all this very, very effective in all locations across the nation and beyond, the role of provision of alternative livelihood is very, very central. So I want you to throw more light, different regions we are, the north, the south, we have a fishermen, we have a locusts, we have a non-timber forest harvesters, and all of that, which of course depend on one source of livelihood or the other. Of course, sand miners and these triggers issues of climate change. So that role of provision of alternative is very, very central. Of course.
Sorry, Mr. Ismail Hassan, can you off your mic? You are interrupting. Mr. Ismail Hassan, off your mic, please. So kindly round up, Mr. President.
Alternative. The role of alternative livelihood to complement stewardship, ownership. To complement stewardship, ownership, and the rest of them is central. And I want you to throw some light on it once again.
Well, there have been some slight disruptions as you were trying to speak. I was hearing you partly, but I will answer it to the best of my understanding of your question. When we talked about ethical issues, we are looking at the fact that climate change actually raises some complex ethical questions that is related to justice, equity, and responsibility, because vulnerable communities actually are being affected. They are the ones that bear the brunt disproportionately. When we say disproportionately, it means that they bear the brunt even more. They are the brunt of environmental impact are highly, they bear it the more. So when we want to explore ethical dimensions of climate change, governance is actually crucial. And of course, that's why we have laws, we have we have rules, we have regulations, we have frameworks, we have that are meant to promote fairness, laws that are meant to promote solidarity, and even promote sustainability in mitigation and adaptation efforts, so because the climate justice, like I mentioned before, has to be, principles of climate justice have to be, it has to be brought to bear, because it must include intergenerational equity, because the fairness have to be applied in all forms, and not just the fairness of this generation, but the kind of fairness or the kind of equity that will translate to even the children of the vulnerable communities. You understand? So it must reflect, it must be distributive, and it must be very fair enough. And of course, this form of justice can only be brought about by the government of a country. A responsible government that knows its responsibilities, that faces its responsibilities and takes its responsibilities seriously. Not an irresponsible government that does not even care whether people are suffering or dying, or whether people I mean, or whatever, whether people, in fact, they don't even care about whatever happens to their citizens, you know. But responsible government definitely, we definitely want to implement every aspect, every principle of climate justice to ensure fairness, not just like the current fairness, but intergenerational equity. We are talking about a sane society, a society where everything works. And we are talking about how it is supposed to be done, how it is supposed to be, you know. So it is left for us now as climate experts, as peace building experts, to do all forms of advocacy, from the perspective of NGOs and what have you, to bring our governments to understand, to bring them to account for some of these things that we are talking about. So thank you very much there. I want to quickly ask Dr. Bolanle Omidiji to speak. Her hand has been up.
Thanks for the opportunity.
That is a fellow vice chancellor. All fellows of our institute, please, if you hang your hand up, you are going to speak very soon.
Good afternoon, everyone. My own little contribution is on this indigenous knowledge involvement.
Yes.
From my experience as NGO working on climate change at local level, right from the planning stage, we must include them up to implementation. And at the M&E level, they must prepare their mind of ownership so that will help for sustainability. The M&E evaluation could be checking, but once they have the mind of ownership, they are the one that will be maintaining whatever the project, and it will help them to sustain it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very beautiful contribution there. This is talking about inclusiveness, inclusivity. You know, you cannot barb or shave someone in his absence. So it is very duly noted, and I believe Mr. Garba Kikwashi, your hand is up. You still have something to say, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, very clearly.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very insightful presentation since yesterday. We really learned a lot. My own contribution also goes almost in line with the Dr. Bolanle. Sir, my major concern sometimes is how the policy makers handling these climate change issues. Sometimes they'll have a kind of mitigation, or adaptive procedures, but the sustainability or sustaining just projects is a very big challenge. Discover that a project can be started in a local community, the community are not involved. They will sit down at the top level, they are designing what they want to design for the communities. They are not carrying alone. They'll come and do execute the project there without involving anybody. The next thing is to gather there and say, this is what government has done, they'll just do the manipulation and go back. When you come back after a few times, those adaptive procedures have gone, nothing is there. And they will repeat the same thing year after year. So I think we also have to draw the attention of policymakers that they need to be holistic in dealing with these climate change issues. It's not about theory, making noise in media, just showing people that we have done something. Why in the research nothing is done or nothing is achieved in sustainable project. So that is what I just want to contribute. The involvement of local community indigenous is very key in sustaining whatever project they want to implement. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Garba, for your contribution. Highly related. Of course, I think Mr. Said Adedoyin, your hand is still up. Do you still have another contribution? If you do, then you can go ahead.
No, sorry, I'm done, sir.
Okay, it's okay. Then, of course, we do not have any contributors anymore from what I'm seeing here. But at the same time, we still have another 15 minutes. Let me use the opportunity to let us understand, make us to know that this training you are getting is from the Institute for Crisis resolution, peace building, and conciliation. A professional membership body in the area of peace and conflict resolution that has been on ground since 2009 and with members across the Federation. And the main objective is to advance the training and practice of peace and conflict resolution, including mediation and conciliation within a professional membership framework. For those of us who are not members, you are very much invited to become a member of ICRPC. The Institute organizes trainings like this from time to time, and we have coordinators across the Federation. You can actually process your membership because we are operating strictly based on direct membership scheme. We consider your years of work experience and also your qualification to give you membership. But of course, when you pay the membership fee, you are also paying for like 5 of our training courses, meaning that we are very much capacity building oriented. We do not believe in accepting members to come into the Institute without proper indoctrination and orientation and training. So 5 of our courses is part of what you are even paying as part of your membership fee. So that means you will take this training online at your own time, in your own pace. Trainings that range from crisis management and security awareness down to even aspects of global peace building and inclusive development. And in addition to mediation and strategic negotiation skills, and of course, climate change, the one you have just taken, and even courses in the area of what do you call it, disaster and even risk management. Yes, even trauma healing and psychosocial intervention, because trauma is an aspect of a crisis resolution. That is crisis within a person. Sometimes the crisis must not even be between one person and another person, or one party and another party, but crisis within a person is a form of crisis that needs to be healed, that needs to be done. So there's a whole lot. And of course, the benefits of membership are very, very much. In addition to continuous membership education training, which you have access to our trainings, courses at very, very discounted rates. You have opportunity for career advancement and career progression. Most of the trainings we do are having CPD units. Like this very course we are taking now is 10 CPD units. And of course, it's going to help you out here. And at the same time, you have opportunity of using the Institute's membership suffix against your name. Like for fellows, FICRPC, associates are AICRPC. These are, suffix you can use against your name. And don't forget, the membership certificate confers on you that status of a certified conflict manager, meaning that it is a certificate of competence. And you can use that certificate to open a consultancy outfit and be functioning as a private consultant, a private conflict management consultant, So these are some of the benefits. In addition to the networking opportunities, we have a WhatsApp group that contains a pool of all our members across the Federation and even in the diaspora. In that group, you have access to resources, materials of different types that come from time to time. Our body of fellow is actually chaired by very renowned conflict management practitioners worldwide. And at the same time, this training is even one of the requirements for membership. So you can, at the end of the day, I will drop the numbers and names of our state coordinator in the climate change group, so that if you want to become a member, you can contact the state coordinator of your state where you are residing. Yes, if you are residing in Benue State, if you are residing in Lagos State, we have state coordinators there. You can contact them directly. And if you have any issues, you can also contact the National Secretariat directly also. If you are resident in a state where there is no coordinator, you can contact the National Secretariat. The numbers will also be provided in the climate change WhatsApp group. in addition to some other materials in respect of membership and what have you. So these are some of the things that I need us to know. It is not just enough to take the training. You should also have the membership certificate of the institute, so that all benefits, privileges that accrue to membership you can also benefit from them. You can also achieve them. But we have our induction of new members quarterly. The next induction is coming up by the grace of God by ending of July, after the last induction we took. And all things being equal, we may likely have our next induction in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. We just came back from Addis Ababa. We have affiliations with the African Union, and we are one of the affiliates. Our institute is one of the affiliates of the African Union Agenda 2063 diplomatic mission. So members of our institute can also be drafted into the diplomatic mission of the African Union Agenda 2063. So without taking much of our time, I have seen that Mr. Gamji Jas, Gamji Jas, his hand is up. I believe he wants to make some contribution before we now go to Professor Chukwudi Michael. So Gamji Jas, you have the floor very quickly and make it brief. Thank you. Mr. Gamji Jas, are you there? Okay, then maybe before he comes, Professor Chukwudi, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to greet, I think, all of us that shared in this forum since yesterday. I'm sure we have been challenged, we have been educated. Yeah, I just have few things, because the last but one speaker, I think a woman, she spoke with passion, looking at her involvement, somebody that served under an NGO, and then knowing that the gap between reality and what is being projected, the gap is significant. So I want to address NGO, that is one. Two, I still want to talk to the institute. For the NGOs, especially if you claim that you are interested in climate change, there is need for you to sit down and rethink how the resources coming to you is achieving the goal that will translate to changing the standard of living of the persons that are directly involved. Not just collecting information for the body you are working under. Getting information, they have their own goal. Some of the NGO too, they are not helping matters. I know they have their limitations, but if you are part of them, you can start thinking differently, such that they should know that these individuals that are going through various challenges as a result of climate change, they not only need assistance, they also need knowledge. They also need some level of exposure. So I want to suggest that there could be a mini competition that is staged by the NGO. You have 3, 4, 5 communities that are facing climate-related challenges, and you have told them what to do, and you are measuring the rate of adoption or adaptation. If you record, there's nothing stopping. I'm thinking about giving an award now, not only to individuals, to communities. If you have clusters of community, depending on available resources, put them, let them showcase, give them opportunity to showcase what they are doing. 1-minute video, and then pictures, send it to you, so that you compare. When you bring them together, they will learn from one another, and then you now give them an award, either depending on the number of community, maybe the best three that are compliant, and they are getting results. That will serve as a message that no government can give to them. That will serve as a stronger network. They can decide on their own, even when the NGO has folded up, to visit such community and say, look, this is the community that came first during this competition. We have something to learn from them. So they will now go there and learn further, even after the NGO program that is just for maybe 5 years or thereabout is folded up. So that is one thing that I think NGO can do to escalate the impact of your contribution to the society. Now, I want to talk to my friend in the institute. You have mentioned the value of somebody being a member and what have you. I will say what I want to say in two. If you say induction, but I want to believe that induction can be done online too, because I am sure if you are not going to pay for the flight or people going to Addis Ababa, then, and they want to be member, I am sure you have provision for them. So on a lighter mood, I want you to, because you have emphasized maybe induction and what have you.
Do online induction.
Okay, fine. That's okay. So that people can also be aware. On a final note, sir, all that you have put together now, I want to believe that some of your staff should, as a result of this 2 days workshop, it has been it's highly compressed. A communique should come out that can be published as a result of this 2-day workshop, whether in dailies, not just online, so that it can go on record. Look at few things that have been put together here. I think it will go a long way for the people that are part of the audience. I also want to believe that the staff in your institute captured the participant in this workshop. So while because I was told that if you need the certificate or material, you're going to pay some tokens, that one will not be a problem for those that want to, but you need to tell us, how do we go about it, for instance? So that with the communique, once it is published, we have a reference date, we have a reference paper, or a daily as the case may be, or you have some periodical in your establishment in addition. But let something like this come out of this forum. Let it come out. If it cannot come out in major daily newspaper, and I think that will make people to be conscious, and it will be added value to all that has been done since yesterday all through to this time. So I want to appreciate you and all your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Chukwudi Michael. Thank you so much. Remember, I told you yesterday, sir, that we will need to have your contacts so that we can work together in these fight, in this campaign against climate change related conflicts. You have spoken extensively well, just like yesterday. Your words have really, carry a lot of weight and a lot of inspiration. Everything you have just said is duly noted. And of course, like I said, we will look into them and try to, in addition to what we have been doing. Our inductions are usually done in a hybrid format. It is not compulsory for everyone to travel for inductions. And even the ones we do in Nigeria here, we do in Abuja, we do in Lagos, it is also been a hybrid one, meaning that people can attend the induction from anywhere. So we always allow that. So even if we are doing it in Nigeria, it is also hybrid. So that will not be a challenge. In respect of everything you have said, even the communique and all that, we usually do them, and this will not be an exception. In ensuring that we do. We make this whole process very meaningful and impactful. Thank you very much, Prof. And just like we said, we would be glad to. I think I will reach out to you directly after this training, because I want to believe your number is on the WhatsApp group over there. Reach out. And in respect of the 10,000 they are paying, is just for the certification. The account details to make the payment will be deposited in the group as soon as we are done with this training. It will be deposited there, and you will now, everybody can pick it up. You just pay into the account, send us the payment receipts, and also send us your full names, the way it should appear on the certificate. That is what we are going to do. So, Mr. Adairu, Damu, please, can you just off your mic? So that's what we are going to do. Put in the account details there. Just pay, you send us receipts, your full names, the way it should appear on the training certificate, and also your email. Thank you very much. So, I think you have anything. Mr. Dahiru Ayuba, please off your mic. I think you came last and you are not even paying attention. So, do we have any other contribution before we use for today? Ayuba Dahiru, please off your mic. Mr. Francis Chipukunya, I think that is our Zambian man, or is it Mali or Malawi? You have
Malawi.
Malawi. Malawi. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for the wonderful meeting that we have for 2 days. We have learned something. I really appreciate what I have learned, and I promise that I will share with others here in Malawi. And also this must also be an opportunity for you as readers to explore the opportunities of working with many organizations here in Malawi, so that they can run the staff of such kind, that because it is also a must that trainings of this nature must also be happening here in Malawi. All in all, thank you very much for this. I really appreciate, and I have learned something which I will share according to what I have here in Malawi. Thank you.
Okay, very good. We are happy to have you with us, and please keep our contacts. We intend to appoint a country coordinator in the country of Malawi. So I also believe that you can be very useful, and if you meet the criteria, you can also function as the country coordinator of our institute in Malawi. Just the way we have.
You can send the requirements so that I can see if I meet them. You can send them on my WhatsApp number directly so that I can see, and I will answer you back wherever there is a need for me to do that.
Okay, very good.
All in all, thank you very much. I really appreciate.
Thank you very much. We will contact you. Thank you for coming on board. Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have any other further? I think there's this person's hand has been up for so long. I keep calling your name, Mr. Gamji Jazz. Gamji Jazz, please. If you are there and you want to speak, you can speak up now very quickly so that we can move. We can maybe shut down the training.
Hear me, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Hello, sir. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for the lecture, sir. I really appreciate what the professor have said. And actually, sir, I have a little bit contribution or a question. regarding what somebody said about climate change yesterday.
Mm.
Nigeria here actually, I don't know whether if there is any impact on federal government are trying to do, or there is any contribution the federal government are trying to do about the climate change. Why I'm saying so, because some state like Lagos State, if you install solar system, they will try to tell you to register with them or to pay some certain amount of money. Does that mean that that one is improving climate change, or they are trying to make it how will I put it? They are trying to make it so difficult to people, because people are trying to manage themselves to see how they can come up with problems, even in the car. Like example now, the car that the vehicle that are using electricity, they are more expensive in Nigeria. So how can we overcome all those issues?
Yes,
Thank you very much.
we actually looked into this. We said it yesterday that to a very large extent that what we have in Nigeria is not encouraging. That instead of us to be getting what will motivate us to mitigate climate change, we are rather getting very discouraging practices from the government, very demotivating attitudes from our government in respect of climate change mitigation. We are supposed, I even said it yesterday, that we are supposed to have subsidized solar energy lights within our for the country's population. But unfortunately, we don't have that. Here in Nigeria, sad to say, we have been taking advantage of every opportunity to exploit the people. There is nowhere, instead of you to be given a pat on the back. I think where you are is very noisy.
Yes, I'm in the office. I'm sorry, sir. Let me off the mic for the meantime.
So instead of you to be given a pat on the back or be given some form of encouragement that you are doing some form of climate change mitigation, they are going to be even trying to tax you, going to even go to the extent of trying to ensure that you even pay through your nose, which is rather unfortunate. But I believe it can get better with concerted efforts, with continuous advocacy that we are going to be definitely we will overcome one day by the grace of God. So thank you very much. You heard one other lady yesterday, Dr. Abigail was saying yesterday that in Cross River State, Calabar, people were cutting down trees indiscriminately. But they started putting fines on people who wants to cut down trees. That even if the tree is inside your compound and it belongs to you and you're the one that planted it and nurture it to maturity, you will have to pay some amount of money, very big amount of money, before you cut down that tree. All that is climate change mitigation. Because when you do deforestation, you are making the climate change risk to become worse. But by the time you do afforestation, we have seen countries that encourage the planting of trees. Some local governments will just encourage people to plant trees. When you are doing that, that is climate change mitigation, because these planting of trees are going to actually mitigate and will always trap greenhouse gas emissions, and will make the effect of climate change to be less impactful. So that is, I think, it is what we need to be seeing. So we believe that gradually we will begin to see where you can even imagine that Nigerians have started selling fake solar panels. It's unfortunate too, because even if the government is not doing well, you still see situations where we as individuals are also maltreating and defrauding ourselves. People will buy panels. Somebody who was actually in a different trade, because he knows that solar panels are beginning to sell he now transits into that particular trade. He begins to buy very fake panels from wherever they get it from. Panels that will not last up to 6 months, and even the inverter will not last up to 6 months, and it begins to die off. All because we want to cut corners. But of course, like we said, we will keep the advocacy, we will keep the movement, we'll keep fighting. And we believe we will find Uhuru one of these days. So thank you very much, Mr. Gamji Jas. I believe you are the only person that was whose hands has been up for quite some time without speaking. We will want to shut down the training for today, and we can continue with any other aspects on the WhatsApp group. On that group, we will be posting other upcoming events too as time goes on. Thank you very much, all of you, for your time, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.